Hello, everybody. This is your teacher Romantic or Ro, and I am making a short class on backfaces because I believe it is a very common problem that comes up in Modeling 101. And I think that most people that did not study any type of 3D programs or went to school for 3D modeling or any of the sort are always kind of stumbling onto back faces and not knowing what they are, how they work, and it can be a little confusing. So let's start by explaining what is a back face. A back face in 3D modeling, you could say that it's basically the side of the faces of the mesh that are facing inward, and therefore they are not visible the for the audience, so it's not necessary to render them. And this is why the back faces are are supposed to be, for the most part, see-through, because you're never going to see them. But in some cases, you will have meshes that they have a visible front and back, or even maybe looking into the inside of it. And obviously, you don't want that part to disappear. So I can show you right now two ways to look at back faces because Blender, if you think like, oh, I'll just use Blender and I'll look at them, uh, Blender automatically lets you see the back faces as part of the mesh. So a lot of people don't even realize if they're working with a copy of the mesh that is just back faces, or if they are ignoring, changing, omitting, or doing something to the back faces because they never see them. So in order to look at back faces, you can do two things. You can go into solid mode, and in solid mode, you can open this little drop down for the viewport shading and turn on backface culling. Now, here you're not going to really see much of a difference, but this is because this hair is made up of two meshes, and actually one of them is only a copy with the back faces flipped. This is the most, let's call it basic, or perhaps the easiest way to make back faces. Um, if I make one of them of these meshes invisible, you will see that part of it disappears. This only happens because I have turned on backface culling, right? If I don't, it's still going to be showing fine. But basically, if I turn it on, this is how it will look in the game. In the game, these parts are going to go transparent. So in order to prevent that, I need to make a copy and flip the faces so I can so it looks solid from both sides. We'll get into that. This is only one form, one way of doing it. I like using solid mode because I can also turn on the random uh, option for the colors, and that way I can see the two meshes. I can see where they connect. It's a little easier in some situations to refit things if you can see where each of the meshes are. So, this is one way to do it if you want. Um, or if you want to look at the material in the here in the viewport shading, again going to the material preview mode, if for whatever reason you want to work with this type of viewport, you can go into the material properties, and in the settings you turn on the backface culling, and it's going to do the same. If I turn or well, I make one of these invisible, I will be able to tell, right, where the back faces are. And again, like, see how if I turn around, you're not going to see the back faces. They are one way only. So, um, you can find them like this, and you can, my recommendation is if you're working with a mesh, and it's important to note that this is referring to hair or gear that either has been ported from other games. This is not always necessary, not always the case, but in a lot of cases, this will apply to meshes from other games or made from scratch. I am going to leave vanilla items to the end because they are a little different. But speaking of hair and clothes that are made from scratch, if you're working with something like this and you're refitting or editing or whatever, and this mesh or well, this particular hair is only basically one part, right? And it has a duplicate that I'm using for the back faces, but really it's just one part, so it's very easy to work with. I shouldn't really have much trouble. But if you have a mesh or you have several parts of this mesh and it's a little difficult to work with all of them, you can very easily just delete the extra parts, the parts that are only back faces, refit everything however you want, make all the changes necessary to the head or the body that you chose. And when you're done, just don't forget to go into edit mode, select the, sorry, not in edit mode because we need to duplicate it first. In object mode, you duplicate the mesh, and this duplicate here, we're going to select, go into edit mode, pressing A to make sure that it's all selected, and then we're going to do mesh, normals, flip, and that's it. If you want to make sure that it works, you can go and turn on the backface culling, and if it worked, it should look the same. And you should be able to turn on and off the other ones and see how it like complements each other, right? They complete each other. So this is for hair, for example. I have this this outfit that also Kiwi Forma ported from another game. This has a lot more parts. So first we have the body, and then we have the meshes that are part of the outfit. And you can see here I have a part that is 1.0 and 1.1, and then 1.2 is basically the same as 1.1, and 1.0, so sorry, and 1.1 and 1.3 are the same as well. So again, these are back faces. If you're not sure and if you're nervous about deleting stuff and not knowing if you're going to get it back or whatever, again, turn on back face calling and compare, like, okay, so is this, I can see this from this side, and I can definitely see that I am adding, right? It's like adding more fabric to this. Like it has like one layer, and now I'm putting another one on it. Uh, so you can uh, check that. Again, I feel like it's a little difficult to tell here in this type of viewport, but if I change it to solid mode here, this is backface calling. Yes, this is backface calling. Um, this one and this one, and Sorry. There we go. I was like, what am I doing? So there we go. This is the 1.2, right? You can see that it's all insides. You can see the inside of the dress just fine, but the outside is not. So if I turn on 1.0, you will see that it's now complete. And the same with the ribbons over here, like this ribbon here, right, disappears on the back. So if I turn on the second mesh, I can see the back faces. So if I wanted to uh, do this particular outfit at the same, I would recommend getting rid of the copies, and then I work only with two meshes instead. I finish modeling it, and then I can duplicate it and do the same thing of going to mesh, normals, and flip. So this is very simple when it comes to modded stuff, right? Vanilla items are different. In theory, if you are making a mesh, like let's say that you're making your own outfit from scratch, in theory, you can just add a modifier, solidify modifier. And when you do that, when you're creating something from scratch and you add this modifier, I think with only rim is the recommended option. When you do that, you are creating back faces for your mesh. So it wouldn't be necessary to make a copy if you are doing this from scratch. But I think that if you wanted to do it with existing meshes that someone else made, you're going to find many other things to fix and other issues. So I cannot say that I recommend it if you're messing with someone else's work. But if you're making something from scratch, Solidify modifier will also give you your back faces automatically without having to make a copy. Not something that most beginners are going to mess with, but I thought I should mention it. So anyway, this is how it works when it comes to stuff that is not made by Square Enix, right? Um, the back faces with vanilla can work a little bit differently. Um, So, for example, I can show you um, with this item. Um, don't mind that it's messed up. I was doing some experimenting with it. So here's something that I think is the most common mistake or most common problem that people that are very new to modding experience. They grab their mesh, their vanilla mesh, and they refit it to a new body, and that's it, right? Like they did it, and they are like, I'm so happy with the result, and then they bring it into text tools, and they notice in text tools that it seems like parts of the mesh are missing. Now, I cannot quite replicate. You can see here some triangles, but I did that on purpose because I couldn't replicate this thing that happens sometimes where you're working with a vanilla item and then it's kind of here, but not so much. You notice that the inside of the clothes or the gear or whatever is gone. So um, when that happens, when in Blender it looks fine, but when you look at it in the viewport, you realize that, oh, I can see the inside of the shirt, like there's nothing in it. That is usually a mistake, or, well, I shouldn't call it a mistake, but it's just something that sometimes happens in Blender. Like you put this mesh in Blender, you edit it, and I'm not exactly sure what causes it or what makes it, but basically it like eats up your back faces. They are gone. So there are a couple of ways of fixing that. If the inside of the stuff that you are working with disappears, in theory, you can just go into text tools, here to the texture part, open the whatever. This is only one material, so I open here the material, more options, edit material, and here in back faces, it has the option to show or hide back faces. Normally, the vanilla meshes are set as to hide back faces. But if you are not seeing them, if you cannot see them in the viewport, then you want to change it to show back faces. And normally that's going to fix it. Again, it's not something that I can demonstrate here, unfortunately, because I have not been able to replicate the error, um, or the this situation. It's always happened to me kind of like on accident. But basically, that is how you can do a quick fix if the inside of your stuff disappears. But if it looks fine, let's imagine that it looks fine in game, or maybe not even. Let's say that I realize in text tools that I have these missing parts, or maybe in text tools it looks fine, but in the game I can see those those rectangles either invisible or maybe black, like very or very dark. That means that could be two things. That could be that the normals are messed up, or it could be the back faces. When it's the back faces, it's very easy to fix almost right away. So, for example, let's say that this is how it looks in the game. Like I noticed there are like either transparent or black areas. I can just do either of the two settings that showed you for backface culling, right? And you should be able to find them and be like, oh, okay, this is what is missing. So remember that for the other meshes, the ones that are not vanilla, we flipped the normals. So that's something that you can do here as well, but you have to go into the face selection mode, right? So it's a little easier. And you select those triangles or those areas that are clearly missing. Then you go into mesh, normals, and flip, and that should fix it. Sometimes they might just, this is something that might happen to either vanilla or in some cases, but not as often, maybe other custom meshes, that something gets messed up in the process of rescaling uh, or maybe saving it in Blender, and you might get some of those issues, but you can simply flip the normals, and that's going to be that fixes it, right? Now, some people with the problem of maybe the inside of the shirts or the jacket or the capes disappearing, what some people do is they duplicate the mesh, right? Again, like we did with the other ones, we duplicate, and after you flip the normals, as we said, you can join both of these. So the shirt now has back faces on both sides. Since it's the same thing, it shouldn't be a problem. However, again, eh, vanilla is very particular. Uh, this method might not work. Like you might do this and it looks fine in text tools, but when you when you are in the game, it's going to look kind of like there's a shadow or there's like something conflicting with the like if they were on top of each other basically and they were kind of like glitching out. So sometimes that can happen, and that's why instead of doing this method I would recommend doing the more options and show back faces, because this is usually what works with the majority of the vanilla meshes usually. But if you're still finding issues, you can try this other method. I know that some people, when they are refitting these type of meshes, like they finish everything, they're done already, and they notice that they have missing back faces, then they do the duplicate and flip the normals. And in a lot of cases, it works just fine. If it doesn't work, again, this option could probably be a better idea. Now, this is talking about vanilla items that are, let's call them standard, right? Like they work like any type of normal clothing. They're not a big deal. However, uh, we also have some vanilla meshes that are special, mainly because they are made with uh, certain specifications. For example, this dress, the cheongsam, um, when you look at it in textiles, it looks completely fine, right? You look at it in textiles and the faces and of everything, it looks in order. When you bring it into Blender, you notice that it looks kind of messed up. This is because this is an open dress, so obviously we want to see both the outside and the inside of it. So it was, well, what Square Enix does is they make back faces with the patterns in the skirt that are supposed to be, coming from both sides, and they put them on top of each other, but they look very weird. If we turn on the back face culling, you will see that now it looks normal. All right, so I had to make a small pause, but returning to um, what I was saying, basically, this dress is you have to be very careful when you work with it. There is a specific process that, when you are refitting vanilla items is kind of like recommended by people that are very experienced with refitting. But I feel like that could be its own class, so I'm not going to really go into detail with that, but I want you to be aware that um, this type of process where you basically subdivide things and try to make you change from trees to quads to make things a little easier to refit and everything. You have to be careful with these back faces. You have to be checking every now and then, like, wait, are the back faces still okay? Because unfortunately, it's very easy to mess them up. Um, so it's a good practice or a good habit to every now and then like stop and be like, okay, wait, are my back faces working all right? Um, and just like, you know, just pay attention to that with whatever mesh you're working with. The last example that I have for that is actually this cape, the obsolete Android um, for striking. I think I don't even remember. This one is special for two reasons. Not only does it have back faces specifically for the cape, um, that. If I go into backface culling, like it's all there, right? I don't see technically any difference. But with this one that I set up with random, you can see a lot better. That's why I like this method more. You can see that there is actually a difference. And this one is very well thought, because if you look at the cape in text tools, the cape has two colors, right? From the back here, it's kind of like brownish, and from the inside, it's gray. So not only are these back faces of each other, but they're actually different meshes. Like you can see that here, this cape, this part is zero point 0.3, and then there is another, I think it's zero point 0. Like both of these are specific parts of the mesh. But if I remove them, this one and this one, I can see that there is still, right? I still have the technically a cape here. This is part 1.0. And this one is a different number, specifically because it has another texture assigned to it. So with this is, you know, kind of getting out of the realm of the back faces and going into color sets. When you're using color sets, there's only so many things that you can do with one texture. So, of course, if they wanted to have a cape that has two sides and they are two different colors, it was much easier to simply make that cape, the inside of the cape, um, a new group and assign it different colors. And that way you create a really nice effect. But at the same time, it's doubling as a back face, right? So if I look at it this way, it's going to disappear. But from the inside, which is the important part that is going to go colored, it shows. Same way if I remove this, but I add this ones, the ones from the group 0, from here I'm not going to see them, but this part will be visible because this is the part that is dyed afterwards, or well, not dyed, but it's the one that has the color and it's supposed to be showing, right? So these are some of the ways that vanilla items play with backfaces. There are other examples. I think a lot of the near gear has like little things like that plays with this. But I just wanted to give you like some examples of how you can find them, and also how they affect the vanilla meshes that you're working with. So hopefully you will be able to fix them a bit easier if something comes up, or if you accidentally delete, or not you, but perhaps Blender erases or eats up your back faces, or if you put it in game and you realize that you're missing something, you can come here and check like, wait, is it the back faces? Yes, it is. Okay, so I just need to flip this or duplicate this, and that's it. I have it fixed, right? So this ended up being a lot longer than I thought. So much so that this is like a recording a few days later, um, because I just kept going and going, and I didn't find an end to it. So hopefully it was not um, too too much rambling. Hopefully it was informative enough. And if you have any questions or any other problems involving this, remember that you can ask us in Modding 101 at any point. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching, and good luck with all your projects.